Welcome to our channel. Today we embark on a deep and reflective journey through the teachings of one of the most influential texts in Western philosophy, Friedrich Nietzsche's Thus Spoke Zarathustra. Get ready to explore concepts such as the Superman, the will to power, and the eternal transformation of the spirit. This is not just a book, it is an invitation to rethink our existence and the values that guide us. If you are ready to challenge your thinking and discover a new perspective, stay with us until the end. Don't forget to subscribe and activate the notification bell to continue exploring the great classics of thought together. Chapter 1. The Prologue to Thus Spoke Zarathustra. The first chapter of Thus Spoke Zarathustra immerses us in the starting point of this philosophical and spiritual journey. Nietzsche introduces Zarathustra, who after 10 years of retreat in the mountains decides to return to the world with a clear mission, to share his vision of the Superman and human transcendence. The call of the sun. Zarathustra begins by speaking to the sun, thanking it for its light and warmth, but also expressing his need to share his accumulated wisdom with others. As the sun descends to give its light, so must I descend, he declares. This metaphor draws a parallel between Zarathustra's abundance of knowledge and the need to radiate it towards humanity. The encounter with the hermit. On his descent, Zarathustra comes across a hermit who represents the old religious beliefs. This character tells him that his life is based on loving God. However, Zarathustra reflects that God is dead, one of Nietzsche's most famous statements. This encounter symbolizes the break with traditional values and the need for a new framework of meaning for human life. The discourse of the Superman. Zarathustra arrives in the city and finds a crowd gathered to see a flying machine. Taking the opportunity, he gives his first speech. He presents the Superman as humanity's final goal. According to Zarathustra, man is nothing more than a bridge between the animal and the Superman. The latter is a being who has overcome mediocrity, imposed values and human limitations, reaching a full and free existence. The crowd's response. Far from accepting the idea of the Superman, the crowd responds with mockery and contempt. Instead, they call for the last man, a symbol of conformism and renunciation of self-improvement. This contrast reveals the masses' resistance to change and their preference for comfort over progress. The tightrope walker and the tragedy. The figure of the tightrope walker, who falls from his tightrope during his act, symbolizes man's struggle to transcend his limitations. Zarathustra, as he bears his body and reflects on his mission, reaffirms his commitment to humanity, even if it is a difficult path. I'll leave you with a thought. The first chapter invites us to question our own limitations. Are we willing to cross our own tightrope in search of growth? Or do we prefer the safety of the last man? Nietzsche challenges us to look for the Superman in ourselves. Chapter 2. Of the Three Transformations. In this chapter, Nietzsche presents one of the most powerful metaphors in Thus Spoke Zarathustra. The three transformations of the spirit. Through these images, Zarathustra explains the process by which a person can achieve true freedom and transcendence. The metaphor of the three transformations. Zarathustra describes three states that the spirit must go through in order to achieve self-improvement. The camel. The first state symbolizes the burden. The camel represents the spirit that accepts the weight of the norms, obligations and expectations imposed by society. It is the obliging spirit that says yes to everything, burdening itself with beliefs and duties without questioning them. I'll leave you with something to think about. Have you ever felt like the camel, shouldering responsibilities you didn't choose or accepting values you never questioned? This initial state is necessary for transformation, but it is not the final destination. The lion. In the second stage, the spirit transforms into a lion. The lion is the rebel, the one that roars against impositions and breaks chains. Here we say no to the weight of tradition and imposed rules. The lion fights against the dragon of you should, which represents external expectations. The challenge of the lion. Although powerful, the lion cannot create. Its role is to destroy what is useless, but it does not have the capacity to construct new values. This is a crucial step towards true freedom, but not the end. The child. The final transformation is that of the child, who symbolizes creativity, innocence, and the ability to establish new values. The child is not tied to the past or to impositions. He sees the world with fresh eyes and with a sense of play and spontaneity. It is here that the spirit can say yes to life and create its own existence. Key phrase: the child is oblivion, a new beginning, a game, a wheel that turns on itself, a sacred first movement. Core message: Nietzsche suggests that to achieve true freedom, we must first accept the weight of society like the camel, then rebel against it like the lion, and finally find the ability to create and live authentically like the child. Let me give you a practical example. Imagine you are trapped in a job you don't love. First, like the camel, you accept the responsibilities of the job because you need to survive. Then, like the lion, you decide to challenge the system, leaving behind what doesn't satisfy you. Finally, like the child, you embark on a new and creative path, exploring your true interests. Reflection for the reader: which of these transformations resonates with you now? Are you the camel, the lion, or the child? Nietzsche invites us to embrace this process as an essential part of our personal evolution. Chapter 3: Of the Chairs of Virtue. In this chapter, Nietzsche tackles the traditional notions of virtue and morality, questioning values that have been accepted without challenge. Zarathustra, as an unconventional teacher, invites us to reflect on the difference between living authentically and blindly following the teachings that others consider correct. The weight of traditional virtues. Zarathustra criticizes the traditional teaching of virtues, which are often imposed as a rigid and unattainable ideal. These virtues, taught from the lecterns, tend to be dogmatic and do not consider individual needs. Instead of freeing us, these ideas can enslave us, forcing us to live according to alien standards. A key phrase: woe to those preachers of virtue. They know not ecstasy of the spirit. The search for authentic virtue. For Zarathustra, virtue should not be a commandment imposed from without, but a personal expression of strength and authenticity. He calls for the abandonment of established norms and the search for a unique path that resonates with the essence of each individual. Virtue, according to Nietzsche, should be a manifestation of inner power, not an act of obedience. The risk of conformism. Zarathustra warns of the danger of accepting without question the values taught by the professors of virtue. When we follow these rules mechanically, we run the risk of losing our uniqueness and creativity. Instead, he proposes a morality based on individuality and self-discovery. A practical example. Think about how we are often told that being virtuous means continually sacrificing ourselves for others or following strict rules. Zarathustra asks, do these actions come from your inner desire, or do you do them because you were told that you must do them? Let me leave you with a reflection. Zarathustra does not reject virtue itself, but the traditional approach that makes it an external imposition. Instead, he invites us to cultivate our own virtue, born of our experiences and our will to live fully. I have some questions for you. What values guide your life? Are they your own, or did you inherit them from others? If you could create your own virtue, what would it be like? True virtue is not taught from a lectern nor found in sermons. It is discovered within each one of us. Zarathustra challenges you to abandon what does not resonate with you and to build a system of values that is authentic, unique, and true to your essence. Chapter 2. The Will to Power and the Fatty Love. Zarathustra introduces us to one of the most profound ideas of his philosophy. The will to power. This is not simply a quest for domination over others, but the inner force that drives us to grow, to overcome our limitations and to become the best version of ourselves. It is the vital energy that leads us to transform our adversities into opportunities. Imagine that inside you there is a spark, a force that wants to expand, to create, to change the world. That is your will to power. Zarathustra invites us to nurture it, to use it not to compete with others, but to surpass ourselves. But together with this idea, Zarathustra presents the amor fati, which means love of fate. It is not enough to accept what life gives us. We must learn to love it. Every experience, even the most difficult ones, has a purpose. Love your fate, says Zarathustra, because in that unconditional acceptance you will find true freedom. Symbolic story. Zarathustra relates the image of a rope stretched between two extremes, the animal and the Superman. The human being is that rope, in constant balance and struggling to advance toward something superior. Greatness does not lie in staying as we are, but in aspiring to become more. How is this achieved? By accepting pain, difficulties, and challenges as an essential part of our growth. I'll give you a practical example. Think of a recent time when you faced failure or disappointment. Maybe it was a project that didn't go as you expected or a relationship that ended. What would happen if you decided to see that experience as a teacher, as something that was preparing you to be stronger, wiser, more complete? Nietzsche, through Zarathustra, teaches us that true freedom is not in avoiding pain, but in embracing it. When you accept what you cannot change and use it as a springboard, you come closer to your true greatness. I leave you with a reflection. How many times have you stopped because you were afraid of failing or because you did not accept what life put in front of you? What could you achieve if you embraced every experience, even the most difficult ones, with love and gratitude? Zarathustra reminds us. He who has a why to live can bear almost any how. What is your why? What drives you to keep moving forward on this tightrope called life? Chapter 3. Eternal Return and Self-Improvement. In this chapter, Zarathustra puts forward one of the most challenging ideas of his philosophy: the eternal return. What would you do if you were told that you would have to live this same life over and over again, repeating every joy, every sorrow, every mistake, and every triumph, for all eternity? This concept is not a prophecy, but a profound question that invites us to reflect on how we live. Nietzsche, through Zarathustra, challenges us to think. Are you living in a way that you would be willing to repeat forever? This idea is not meant to scare us, but to inspire us to take control of our existence, to live each day with intention and fulfillment. Symbolic story. Zarathustra relates how, when meditating on eternal return, he realizes that only those who fully embrace life in all its complexity can bear this idea. He talks about the lion, the symbol of strength and rebellion, freeing itself from the chains of conformity. But Zarathustra doesn't stop there. He also mentions the child, the final stage of self-improvement, when we accept life with play, curiosity, and creativity. I'll give you a practical example. Imagine that today is the first day of the rest of your life, but also the first day of a life that you will repeat forever. What would you do differently? Maybe you would spend more time with your loved ones, you would dare to pursue that dream you keep putting off, or you would simply enjoy the present moment more. Zarathustra invites us to reflect. Are you living in accordance with your deepest values, or are you simply reacting to circumstances? The idea of eternal return is not a threat, but a call to wake up. I will leave you with a reflection. Ask yourself, are you living a life worth living over and over again? What changes could you make today to get closer to that version of yourself that you have always wanted to be? An outstanding phrase. Live in such a way that you can love every moment as if it were eternal. Nietzsche urges us to put aside regret and to embrace life with courage, determination, and passion. Chapter 4. The Superior Man and the Challenge of the Free Spirit. In this chapter, Zarathustra introduces the figure of the superior man, but not as a definitive goal, but as a challenge that we must overcome. Nietzsche uses this figure to criticize those who are content with a life of mediocrity disguised as greatness. According to Zarathustra, the superior man is nothing more than a stepping stone on the path to the Superman, who transcends human limitations. Zarathustra reflects on the trap of self-idolatry. Many see themselves as superior because they have achieved a little more than others, but this pride is a barrier to true growth. The real challenge, he says, is to break the chains of external expectations and constantly seek our transformation. Symbolic story. Zarathustra describes the superior man as someone trapped in a castle, surrounded by comforts, but unable to cross the gates to freedom. This castle represents the beliefs and norms that bind us, while the Superman is the one who finds the courage to tear down those walls. The chapter is full of powerful images that invite us to reflect on our own self-imposed limitations. How many times have we been satisfied with small achievements, forgetting the immense potential we have within us? A practical example. Think of something you have always wanted to achieve, but have postponed out of fear or comfort. It could be learning a new skill, leaving a job that doesn't fulfill you, or even facing a difficult relationship. This chapter is an invitation to leave the castle of your own excuses and take a step into the unknown. I leave you with a reflection. Zarathustra asks, are you really free, or do you only think you are? True freedom, he tells us, does not consist of doing what we want, but of daring to be who we really are. Highlighted quote. The superior man is an illusion. The Superman a creation. Nietzsche challenges us not to remain complacent, but to continually seek our own path, even when it is the most difficult. Chapter 5. The Overcoming of Man and the Will to Power. In this chapter, Zarathustra addresses the central idea of Nietzsche's thinking, the will to power. This concept does not refer to domination over others, but to the inherent impulse of every living being to overcome its own limitations and reach a higher state of existence. The inner struggle as a path to growth. Zarathustra teaches us that the greatest challenge is not outside us, but within. Each of us wages a constant battle between conformism and the desire for transcendence. Those who embrace this struggle become creators, while those who avoid it become spectators of their own lives. Symbolic story. Zarathustra tells the metaphor of the rope stretched between the animal and the Superman, a dangerous and exciting path that only the brave dare to take. Those who are afraid of the abyss tend to return to the starting point, while those who face the risk find true freedom. Lessons from the chapter. The importance of risk. There is no growth without uncertainty. Each challenge overcome brings us closer to our true essence. The rejection of conformism. Society invites us to accept comfort as a goal, but Zarathustra warns us that this kills our creativity and will. Creation as the supreme act. The man who overcomes his fears not only changes his life, but also creates something new in the world. I'll give you a practical example. Imagine a dream or goal that you have put off because it seems unattainable. Zarathustra invites you to see it not as an obstacle, but as an opportunity to explore your true capacity. Instead of thinking, what if I fail? Ask yourself, what can I learn if I try? Highlighted quote. He who does not risk falling will never learn to fly. Here's a thought. The will to power is a call to live life to the full, to be creators of our own reality and not mere spectators. What will you do today to walk the tightrope towards your own Superman? Chapter 6. Eternal Return and Acceptance of Life. In this chapter, Zarathustra introduces one of the most challenging and profound concepts of his philosophy, the eternal return. According to this idea, everything we do, feel and experience is destined to be repeated eternally. This thought is not a punishment, but an invitation to reflect on how we live. The eternal return as proof of our existence. Zarathustra asks a crucial question. Are you living in such a way that you would want to repeat this life over and over again? If the answer is no, then maybe it's time to rethink our decisions, relationships and goals. Accepting eternal return means embracing every moment, even the difficult ones, as necessary parts of our existence. Symbolic story. Zarathustra relates a vision in which a demon approaches him and says, "This life as you have lived it, you will have to live it over and over again, countless times more." Initially, this thought fills him with anguish, but then it becomes a tool for valuing each moment and finding meaning in the everyday. Lessons from the chapter. Live with intention. If you knew that this day would be repeated forever, would you live it differently? Accept the inevitable. Instead of regretting difficult moments, find a lesson in them that enriches your life. Make peace with the past. If everything repeats itself, you can also reinterpret what you have already experienced as something valuable. A practical example. Think of a recent day. How much time did you spend complaining, getting distracted, or doing tasks that don't bring you happiness? Reflect on how you can fill your life with moments that are really worth repeating. An outstanding phrase. Live in such a way that you wish every moment to be repeated for eternity. Here is a reflection for you. The eternal return is not only a philosophical challenge, but a tool to transform your present. What would you change today to make your life a work you would like to repeat infinitely? Chapter 7. The Death of God and the Superman. In this fundamental chapter, Zarathustra addresses the spiritual crisis that humanity is going through. God is dead, he declares, not as an attack on faith, but as a recognition that the old structures and values that guided life have lost their power. This absence leaves a void that must be filled by a new form of existence. The Superman. What does the death of God mean? Zarathustra does not celebrate the death of God, but sees it as an inevitable consequence of changes in society. Science, reason, and individualism have displaced traditional beliefs. However, this also leaves humanity in a state of disorientation. Without a purpose imposed from above, each person must create their own meaning. The call to the Superman. The Superman, according to Zarathustra, is not a superior physical being, but an ideal, a goal to be achieved. He is one who transcends human limitations and creates his own values, instead of depending on external norms. He is an individual who lives fully, accepting both joy and suffering, and uses both to grow. Lessons from the chapter. Create your own values. In a world where the old rules have lost their force, you are responsible for deciding what is important in your life. Accept the challenge of change. The death of old ideas can be disconcerting, but it is also an opportunity to reinvent yourself. Live as a creator. The Superman does not fear uncertainty. He uses it to forge a unique and meaningful path. Symbolic story. Zarathustra observes a crowd that mocks a tightrope walker. The tightrope walker represents the human being, trying to cross from his current state to the Superman. When the tightrope walker falls, he symbolizes the fear and doubts we face when trying to overcome our limitations. Here's a practical example. Think of an area of your life where you feel bound by external expectations, such as a career that doesn't fulfill you or relationships that don't reflect your values. Reflect on how you can start to make your own rules in that area. A standout quote. Man is something that must be overcome. I leave you with a reflection. What values guide your life today? Are they your own, or did you inherit them without questioning them? This chapter invites you to be brave, to face uncertainty, and to design an authentic and meaningful existence. Chapter 8. Eternal Transformation and the Will to Power. In this chapter, Zarathustra delves into the concept of the will to power, an internal force that drives individuals to overcome their limits and to continually transform themselves. This principle is not about exercising control over others, but about mastering oneself, growing and creating. Transformation as the essence of life. Zarathustra describes life as a constant process of change. Those who resist change are trapped in a cycle of mediocrity, while those who embrace transformation discover their true potential. Nietzsche compares this process to the metamorphosis of a caterpillar into a butterfly. Painful, but necessary to reach fulfillment. The will to power, vital and creative force. The will to power is not a simple desire for success or influence. It is an energy that moves us to create, to overcome obstacles and to live with intensity. Zarathustra points out that, when facing difficulties, we should not see them as barriers, but as opportunities to strengthen our will and rediscover our capacity to act. Key lessons of the chapter. Embrace transformation. Life is constantly changing. Resisting only generates suffering. Learn to adapt and grow with each experience. Live with purpose. The will to power drives you to seek a purpose beyond comfort or conformity. Create your own path. True strength lies not in controlling others, but in mastering your inner fears and limitations. Symbolic story. Zarathustra narrates the journey of the human spirit through 3 stages. The camel, which bears the burdens imposed by society. The lion, which destroys those chains. And the child, which represents the capacity to create something new. This process illustrates how we can free ourselves from inherited values to build an authentic life. I'll give you a practical example. Imagine you face a difficulty in your work or personal life. Instead of avoiding it, analyze how this situation can help you develop skills, patience, or resilience. How can you turn this challenge into an opportunity for growth? Highlighted quote. What doesn't kill me makes me stronger. Reflection for the listener. When was the last time you faced a major change? How did you handle it? This chapter invites you not only to accept life's transformations, but to look for them as opportunities to evolve.